Hi, I'm Sarah Benwell, the editor of Insurance Investor and FundOperator.com. I'm here with Jonathan Walker, CFA, Sustainable Investment Manager at Gresham House. Jonathan's speaking at our ESG Risk and Reporting Forum later this year, and ahead of that, we wanted to catch up with him to find a little bit about what he's going to be talking about. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi there, hi.
So my first question is, obviously you're speaking about sustainability at the conference and sustainability regulations in particular. So what are some of the big sustainability regulations that investors need to be aware of at the moment?
Yeah, so it depends a little bit on where the organization or where the fund is based or where it's looking to market. Clearly in Europe, sustainability regulations are already relatively well established. If you look at things like the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, SFDR, and EU taxonomy, these are already impacting on sustainability-oriented funds. Looking at it from an organization or a corporate perspective in Europe, you've got the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Now, this is looking to improve the quality of sustainability reporting for corporates. So looking at things like environmental matters, social and employee aspects, human rights, anti-corruption, bribery issues, and so on. And we should hopefully get some draft standards towards the end of June, so later this month. In the UK, starting next year, there'll be about 1,300 or so of the largest UK registered companies having to start to report against the TCFD framework. And also later on this year, we're going to have the UK sustainability disclosure requirements and the green taxonomy. These will start to mature as the year goes on. Underpinning all of these, you've got the work that the IFRS is doing on its international sustainability standards. So we'll have the first draft of the ISSB towards the end of this year, focusing on climate. So there's a lot there already that I'm sure investors and corporates will be tackling with, and quite a bit coming down the line too.
Yeah, it sounds like an awful lot to be getting on with. So with that in mind, how can investors and companies make sure that they're making the most out of these regulations rather than it just being this massive regulatory burden that they have to deal with?
Yeah, as I say, I mean, there's an awful lot that companies and investors are having to tackle at the moment. I think, as you say, it represents an enormous regulatory burden, and there's definitely no overstating that. But I think by really embracing these frameworks, it's easier said than done, but by embracing these frameworks, companies, asset managers can look to really improve their operations and investment processes. So if you take a framework, so let's take something like the EU SFDR, if you start to pull that apart and you really look at what it's trying to achieve here, then you can actually pull out some of those metrics and the KPIs and start to import them into your internal operations. So if you're a fund, you might look to embed these in your KPI banks. You might look to include some of the metrics in impact analysis, active ownership plans. So you can really start to have investment processes and regulatory requirements working alongside each other. And I think the same goes for companies and corporates too. There's an awful lot in there. And if you take the CSRD, for example, there's a lot in there already that you can start to pull out and put into processes and strategies internally. So to try and get these two things working symbiotically. I think it's really important that by being open and being proactive and trying to anticipate future changes, you really can make the most of this new regulation to evolve and enhance existing ways of working.
Lovely. And, we've obviously talked about some of the current regulation and some of the kind of more immediate stuff. What are the future regulations that we can expect coming down the track that perhaps people might want to start thinking about now?
Yeah, so as I say, in the UK, from next year, you've got a significant number of companies having to start to report against TCFD. Later this year, we'll have more knowledge and information on the UK SDR and green taxonomy. And as I say, you've also got the IFRS, the work it's doing in the background around creating the baseline sustainability standards. If we look a little bit further, I think with lots of these frameworks, they're going to start with climate and they're going to slowly move into other areas as the ways in which they communicate those frameworks sort of start to mature. And if we use Europe as an example, if you look at what's happening with the EU taxonomy, for example, That has 6 environmental objectives, and we've already seen the first 2, which are climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. That's going to then move on to other environmental issues like water and marine resources, transitioning to a circular economy, pollution prevention, and also eventually biodiversity. So you can see on the environmental side, you have a clear runway of priorities, and I think it's more than likely that the UK is going to mirror this with its own green taxonomy looking forward. Now, that's just on the environmental side. On the social side, you're starting to see some of these issues come through things like the UK SDR and EU SFDR. But it's also worth noting that there are other frameworks and large regulatory matters being tabled. So things like a European social taxonomy. This we already have some sort of draft requirements already, and this is going to focus on human rights, equality, data protection, cybersecurity, all the way through to infrastructure and gender equality. So I think what's really important is that the organizations and the regulation setters hopefully learn from some of the teething issues of EU SFDR and the UK versions, so that when we want to expand out the range of regulation to all aspects of ESG, we'll have learned some of those lessons, and they'll be a little bit easier to implement and a lot easier for companies and for financial institutions to absorb.
Lovely. Last one from me. Obviously there's lots of stuff coming down the track as we've discussed. How can organizations, investors, etc., make sure that they're well placed to meet some of this regulation head on, rather than kind of being caught on the back foot by unexpected developments?
Yeah, I think first of all, and again, it's easier said than done, but I think organizations need to be open to change. I think large companies in particular have been set in their ways for a very long time, and I think in part that's what's led us to the state that we're in. We've got a climate crisis, and everything that entails very much here already. So I think that starts from the top. You need to have a strategic imperative of the importance of ESG coming all the way down from the board through management to each individual worker, and everybody needs to be clear on what it means to be sustainable, or to be a sustainable business or a sustainable individual. And there's a number of ways that can happen. First and foremost is with training. This needs to be given not just to a few choice individuals. We want everybody singing from the same hymn sheet within an organization. So individuals need to understand what ESG means to them and also to their organizations. I think if individuals feel intimately attached to ESG and sustainability, then they're going to be far more open to regulation designed to promote a more sustainable future. Having said that, there are clearly some core roles which need to have people that are very skilled within ESG and sustainability. So clearly legal, finance, compliance, operations divisions, they all need to have people there who are comfortable with ESG regulation and the nature of what it's trying to achieve. In terms of kind of preempting future regulation, clearly you can never really preempt regulation. But I think actually what we're starting to see is sustainability regulation moving from a period of fragmentation to one of harmonization. So if we look at the UK as an example, you've got the UK sustainability disclosure requirements coming up, and they've already said within that it's going to rely on TCFD and what the IFRS is trying to do with its international sustainability standards. So it's clear that if you're a company and you're going to have to deal with these frameworks further ahead, and that's already going to lean on TCFD, for example, it's really, really important that you make sure that TCFD and everything that it entails is embedded within an organization. You need to know your climate risks and your opportunities, and you need to ensure that improving these issues is a central part of what you're trying to achieve as a business. Then when new regulation does come along that builds upon it, you've already done some of the heavy lifting. As I say, I'm relatively positive about the regulatory landscape in Europe. And I think, as I say, we're moving from a period of fragmentation to one of harmonization. But I think as a result, it's really, really important that organizations are open to these regulations, and to ensure that they're not just seen as a tick boxing exercise, rather that they are going to be crucial for what the business is trying to achieve moving forwards.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. That's been a wonderful whistle-stop tour. I can't wait to hear more about this and many other ESG issues from you and our other speakers later in the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much.